Most people believe that a heart attack comes without warning. One moment you're fine, and the next, everything changes. But the truth is different. In most cases, the body gives you signals weeks, even a month before. The problem is, those signals are often subtle. They feel like normal aging, stress, or just being tired. But ignoring them can be a deadly mistake. Every year, millions of people suffer a heart attack. Many of them had warning signs but didn't recognize them. A sudden wave of fatigue, shortness of breath while climbing stairs, a strange ache in the shoulders or jaw, even poor sleep that feels unexplained. All of these can be the heart's way of whispering for help. Here's something important to remember. Research shows that up to 80% of heart attacks could be prevented if the early signs were recognized and treated in time. That means most heart attacks are not fate. They are preventable. But only if you listen to your body. If you are over 60, especially if you live with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or diabetes, these signals matter even more. Many seniors I meet tell me the same story. They feel tired all the time, or they wake up dizzy, but they blame it on age. Some notice heartburn that doesn't go away, or a nagging pain in the back. They dismiss it until one day they find themselves in the emergency room. This video is here to help you recognize those early warnings before it's too late. We'll walk through 8 signs of a heart attack that can appear up to a month in advance. Signs you must not ignore. Some may seem harmless, but they can mean the difference between life and death. Stay with me until the end, because knowing these signs may not only protect your heart, it may save your life, or the life of someone you love. Sign 1. Indigestion or heartburn. Let's begin with one of the most overlooked warning signs, indigestion or heartburn. Many people think of heartburn as just a stomach problem. Maybe you ate too much, had spicy food, or drank too much coffee. For years, my patients over 60 have told me the same thing. Doctor, it's just acid reflux. It happens to everyone my age. But here's the truth. Sometimes that burning feeling in your chest is not coming from your stomach at all. It may be your heart crying for help. The heart and the stomach share nerve pathways. That means when the heart is under stress, the brain can misinterpret the signal and make it feel like indigestion. This is especially common in older adults, women, and people with diabetes. Instead of the classic crushing chest pain, they may feel pressure or burning that looks like simple heartburn. Imagine this. A 68-year-old woman with high cholesterol and high blood pressure notices a burning in her chest after dinner. She takes an antacid and it eases for a while. She thinks nothing of it. But the next morning, the same feeling comes back while she's just sitting quietly. That is not stomach acid. That is her heart struggling to get enough blood. Research supports this. In a study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, many patients reported indigestion-like discomfort in the weeks before their heart attack. They ignored it, assuming it was food-related, but in reality, it was an early warning from narrowed coronary arteries. So how do you know when to worry? If indigestion is joined by nausea, cold sweats, dizziness, or pain spreading to the jaw, arms, or back, do not ignore it. This is not about an upset stomach. This could be about your life. The saddest part is that many seniors later say, "I thought it was nothing." Don't let that be your story. If you feel chest burning that comes with other symptoms, especially if you already live with high blood pressure, cholesterol problems, or diabetes, treat it as urgent. Your heart does not whisper for no reason. Listen now, before it's too late. Sign 2. Unusual fatigue. The second warning sign is one that many older adults dismiss every single day: unusual fatigue. We all expect to feel a little tired as we get older, but there is a difference between normal tiredness and the deep, heavy exhaustion that can signal heart trouble. This kind of fatigue doesn't go away with rest. You might sleep 8 hours, yet wake up more drained than when you went to bed. Simple tasks like making the bed, showering, or carrying groceries suddenly feel like climbing a mountain. Many seniors describe it as feeling like I have the flu, but without fever or cough. One of my patients, a 72-year-old man with mild heart failure and high blood pressure, told me, "Doctor, I thought I was just slowing down because of age, but then I couldn't walk from my living room to the kitchen without resting." That exhaustion wasn't aging. It was his heart struggling to pump enough blood to his muscles and brain. Science confirms this. A study in European Heart Journal found that fatigue is one of the most common prodromal symptoms in older adults before a heart attack. It happens because the heart can't circulate blood effectively, so the body redirects energy to vital organs, leaving your arms and legs weak and heavy. This is why so many people feel drained even after small activities. They think it's just part of life at 60 or 70, when in reality, their heart is waving a red flag. The danger is that unusual fatigue builds slowly. At first, you may just feel a little more tired than usual. Then, weeks later, you find yourself sitting more, walking less, and giving up things you used to enjoy. By the time chest pain appears, the heart may already be on the edge. Please remember this: if you are over 60 and living with high blood pressure, diabetes, or high cholesterol, never dismiss fatigue that lingers for days or weeks. It is not just age. It could be your heart asking for help. Ignoring it could mean missing your one chance to prevent a life-threatening heart attack.
Sign 3. Sleep disturbances. The third sign may surprise you because most people never connect it with the heart. Sleep disturbances. Trouble falling asleep, waking up often during the night, or waking up tired even after a full night in bed. These can all be early signals that the heart is under stress. Many seniors I meet share the same story. A 70-year-old woman told me, "Doctor, I lie in bed exhausted, but I can't sleep. Some nights I wake up gasping for air." She thought it was just anxiety or age, but what she didn't realize was that her heart was struggling to keep her body supplied with oxygen during the night. Here's why this happens. When the heart isn't pumping efficiently, oxygen levels can drop while you sleep. The medical term for this is nocturnal hypoxia, and it forces your brain to wake you up repeatedly, even if you don't remember it. This leaves you feeling unrested and drained the next day. A study in Circulation found that poor sleep quality is strongly linked with a higher risk of heart disease and heart attack. It's not just that sleep problems affect the heart. Often, the heart itself is the cause of the poor sleep. What makes this sign so dangerous is how easily it's brushed aside. People over 60 often assume restless nights are just part of aging. But if you find yourself tossing and turning, waking suddenly with a racing heartbeat, or having vivid nightmares for no clear reason, you should not ignore it. These can be early signs that your coronary arteries are narrowing and that your body is fighting harder at night to keep blood flowing. If you already live with high blood pressure, diabetes, or an enlarged heart, sleep disturbances deserve even more attention. They are not just about stress or bad habits. They can be the body's way of sounding an alarm. The saddest words I hear are, "I thought it was just poor sleep." Don't wait until a restless night turns into a medical emergency. If sleep feels broken for no reason, and especially if it comes with fatigue, shortness of breath, or chest discomfort, see it for what it may be: your heart asking you to act before it's too late.
Sign 4. Shortness of breath. Another powerful warning that often hides in plain sight
is shortness of breath. Many older adults brush it off saying, "I'm just out of shape," or "I'm getting old." But when breathing feels harder than it should, especially during simple tasks, your heart may be struggling. Picture this. A 66-year-old man with high blood pressure and high cholesterol tells me, "Doctor, I used to climb the stairs to my bedroom without thinking. Now, halfway up, I feel like I've just run a marathon." He tried to convince himself it was aging. In reality, his heart wasn't pumping blood effectively, forcing his lungs to work harder just to keep him breathing. This happens because the heart and lungs are deeply connected. When the heart can't move blood forward, pressure builds in the blood vessels of the lungs. Fluid may even leak into the lung tissue, making every breath feel heavy. The medical term for this is pulmonary congestion, and it is a classic sign of underlying heart trouble. Research from the American Journal of Cardiology shows that breathlessness, especially during mild exertion, is a strong predictor of future heart attack in adults over 60. The key difference to watch for is this. If you get winded only after intense exercise, that's normal. But if you feel short of breath while walking, climbing stairs, or even lying flat in bed, that's a red flag. Many people notice this most at night. They lie down to sleep and suddenly feel like they can't breathe, forcing them to sit up just to catch their breath. That's not normal aging. That's the heart saying it's under serious stress. The heartbreaking reality is that many seniors dismiss this warning until it's too late. They believe it's their lungs or simply slowing down. But if you are over 60, especially if you already live with high blood pressure, diabetes, or a history of artery blockages, you must not ignore unexplained breathlessness. Your body should not fight for air during everyday life. When it does, it's a sign that your coronary arteries may be blocked and your heart is losing strength. Listen to that signal. Acting early could mean preventing the heart attack that otherwise might strike without warning.
Sign 5. Jaw or neck pain. The fifth warning sign often confuses people because it doesn't seem connected to the heart at all. Pain in the jaw or neck. Most older adults think of tooth problems, arthritis, or just tension. But sometimes this subtle discomfort is the heart's way of asking for help. Imagine this. A 68-year-old woman with diabetes and high blood pressure tells me, "Doctor, I kept feeling an ache in my jaw that came and went. I thought it was my teeth. But then one night, it spread into my neck and I felt a wave of nausea." She was lucky enough to get checked. What she thought was dental pain was actually her heart warning her of a dangerous blockage. Here's why this happens. The heart doesn't have pain nerves the way your skin does. Instead, when the heart struggles from a lack of blood flow, it sends signals through a pathway called the vagus nerve. That nerve travels through the chest into the neck and jaw. The brain can misinterpret the signal, making heart pain feel like it's coming from your jaw, throat, or neck. What makes this sign dangerous is that the pain often comes and goes. One day, it's a dull ache in your jaw. Another day, it's stiffness in your neck. Then it disappears, convincing you it's nothing serious. But this intermittent pattern is exactly how heart-related pain behaves before a heart attack. A study in the Journal of the American Dental Association found that jaw pain of unknown origin can be an early sign of heart disease, especially in older women and people with diabetes. That's why this warning deserves special attention. If you already live with high cholesterol, artery blockages, or a history of heart trouble, don't dismiss jaw or neck discomfort, especially if it shows up during activity and improves with rest. That pattern is classic angina, a sign that your heart is not receiving enough blood. Sign 6. Dizziness or lightheadedness. The sixth warning sign is one that many seniors describe but often dismiss. Dizziness or lightheadedness. It can feel like the room suddenly tilts, your vision blurs, or for a moment you might faint. Most people think, "I must have stood up too fast," or "maybe I didn't drink enough water." But when these episodes keep returning without a clear reason, your heart may be the problem. Let me share the story of a 72-year-old man
who had high cholesterol and an enlarged heart. He told me, "Doctor, sometimes I'm just sitting in my chair and out of nowhere, the world spins. It passes in a few seconds, so I ignore it." Sadly, he later suffered a heart attack that might have been prevented if he had taken those dizzy spells seriously. Here's what's happening inside the body. The heart's job is to pump oxygen-rich blood to every organ, including the brain. If your coronary arteries are blocked, or if the heart is too weak to pump efficiently, the brain receives less oxygen. Even a brief dip in blood flow can cause dizziness, lightheadedness, or the sensation that you might faint. Unlike dizziness from dehydration or standing too quickly, heart-related dizziness can strike at any time while you're sitting, walking, or even lying down. That unpredictability is a red flag. A study published in Stroke showed that older adults who experience frequent, unexplained dizziness have a significantly higher risk of heart events and even sudden cardiac death. It's not just an inconvenience, it's a serious warning. If you already live with high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart failure, these dizzy spells are especially concerning. They often signal that the heart is failing to supply steady blood flow to the brain. The danger is that people shrug it off. They say, "It went away, so it must not be important." But your heart is like an engine. If it falters even briefly, you can't ignore it. The fact that it happens at all means something is wrong. The saddest thing I hear from families is, "He kept saying he felt lightheaded, but we thought it was nothing." Don't let that be your story. If dizziness repeats, if it comes with chest discomfort, shortness of breath, or fatigue, see it for what it may be, a warning that your heart is on the edge and needs urgent attention.
Sign 7. Upper back or shoulder pain. The seventh warning sign can feel so ordinary that many seniors overlook it: upper back or shoulder pain. At first, you might think it's from sleeping the wrong way, gardening too long, or simply age-related stiffness. But sometimes that dull ache between your shoulder blades or spreading across your upper back is not coming from your muscles. It's coming from your heart. I remember a 66-year-old woman with high blood pressure and diabetes who told me, "Doctor, I had this nagging pain in my back. It wasn't sharp, just heavy and tight. I rubbed it, I stretched, I even thought it was arthritis. I never dreamed it was my heart." Weeks later, she had a heart attack. Her only warning had been that muscle pain in her back. Here's why this happens. The heart and the spine share nerve pathways. When the heart is under stress from blocked arteries, the pain doesn't always stay in the chest. Instead, it radiates to other areas like the shoulders, upper back, or even down the arms. For many older adults, women, and people with diabetes, this is more common than classic chest pain. A study in the European Heart Journal confirmed that women are more likely than men to experience heart-related symptoms in areas other than the chest, such as the back or shoulders. This makes the warning even easier to miss. The tricky part is the pain's character. It's not the stabbing, sudden pain you expect from an injury. Instead, it's a deep, spreading pressure or heaviness. It can come and go, sometimes triggered by activity like walking or climbing stairs, and then relieved by rest. That pattern is typical of angina, when the heart struggles to get enough oxygen. If you already live with artery blockages, high cholesterol, or have a history of heart failure, you cannot afford to ignore these signals. Too many patients delay care because they think, "It's just my muscles." But by the time the pain becomes constant, the heart may already be in crisis. One of the most heartbreaking things families tell me is, "She thought it was just a sore back." That mistake can cost lives. If your back or shoulder pain feels unusual, heavy, or paired with fatigue, dizziness, or shortness of breath, treat it as a possible cry for help from your heart. It could be the warning that saves your life.
Sign 8. Mild, intermittent chest discomfort. The 8th and most dangerous sign is also the easiest to dismiss. Mild, intermittent chest discomfort. It's not always the dramatic, crushing pain we see in movies. Instead, it may feel like a tightness, a heaviness, or even a burning sensation that comes and goes. Because it disappears with rest, many seniors brush it off as just aging or probably indigestion. But this is exactly the type of signal that often precedes a full-blown heart attack. I think of a 70-year-old man with high cholesterol and a history of artery blockages. He told me, sometimes when I carried groceries or climbed the stairs, I'd feel pressure in my chest. But when I sat down, it would fade, so I didn't worry. Sadly, those episodes were angina, his heart crying out for oxygen. One evening, the pain didn't stop. He was rushed to the hospital with a massive heart attack. Here's what happens inside the body. When the coronary arteries become narrowed, blood flow to the heart is temporarily reduced during exertion. That reduced oxygen causes the heart muscle to struggle, creating discomfort. Once you rest, oxygen demand lowers and the pain fades. That cycle tricks people into believing it's harmless, but it's the heart's most urgent warning. Unlike simple heartburn, this discomfort may spread beyond the chest to the arms, shoulders, neck, jaw, or even the upper back. It doesn't always feel severe, and that's what makes it deadly. The American Heart Association reports that up to 1/3 of heart attack patients experienced only mild or unusual chest discomfort before their event. For older adults, women, and those with diabetes, the symptom may be even more subtle. Instead of pain, they might feel fullness, pressure, or simply something not right. That vague unease is often the body's final alarm. The tragedy is that people wait. They think, I'll see if it goes away. But every minute lost allows more heart muscle to die. If your chest discomfort comes and goes, if it gets worse with activity, or if it's paired with dizziness, shortness of breath, or nausea, it's time to act. Call your doctor or emergency services. The most haunting words I hear are, "He said it was just a little chest pressure." Please don't ignore it. That little pressure may be the thin line between survival and catastrophe. Your heart whispers before it screams. Listen to it while there is still time.
We've now walked through 8 early signs of a heart attack that too many people ignore. Heartburn, unusual fatigue, poor sleep, shortness of breath, pain in the jaw or neck, dizziness, shoulder or back pain, and mild chest discomfort. Each of these is your body's way of whispering, pay attention, something is wrong. For older adults living with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or even early heart failure, these signs cannot be brushed aside. I think of the man who asked me, "Doctor, how often should I go for an ECG?" Or the woman who said, "I thought my shoulder pain was just aging." Their stories remind us that waiting, hoping it will pass, is the most dangerous choice of all. The truth is sobering. The American Heart Association estimates that up to 80% of heart attacks could be prevented if the early warning signs were recognized and acted upon. That means 8 out of 10 lives could be saved. Lives of parents, grandparents, neighbors, maybe even yours. So let me speak directly to you. If you felt any of these symptoms, if your body has been sending signals, even quiet ones, please don't wait. Talk with your doctor. Schedule that checkup. Ask the hard questions. Every day you take action, you give your heart a fighting chance. And if this video opened your eyes, do 2 things right now. First, share it, because someone you love may be ignoring these signs today. Second, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss life-saving information like this. Your heart doesn't fail in an instant. It asks for help. The choice to listen, that choice is in your hands, starting today.